Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Pesachim Daf Nun Zayin is a short daf, the last daf in Perek Makam Shenago. It's also the last daf in a very distinct first half of Mesachas Pesachim. The rest of the Masechta is an entirely different subject. So the daf talks a little bit about taking peya from vegetables, which has been our most previous topic. Then we'll discuss being makdish items in order to prevent their misuse, and this will take us to a bit of a conversation about kohanim and potential abuses of their power that they may have used. So the Gemara has just been discussing some people, the Jews of Yericho, who took peya from vegetables. Vegetables are not chayiv in peya midaraisa, and by taking peya, you have a potential pitfall that people won't take truma and meiser from them, and they are chayiv in truma and meiser. Peya generally is not chayiv in truma and meiser, but because these things are not real peya, they are chayiv in truma and meiser. So the Gemara quotes an incident. It's a brisa that brings the son of Buhayan, who gave peya from his vegetables, and his father, Buhayan himself, came and he saw that the poor people had collected the vegetables and they were walking out of the garden. He said to them, "My sons, drop the peya and I'll give you twice as much in vegetables that has meiser taken from it properly. Not because I'm stingy, I'm very happy for you to have it, but the Chachamim said there is no mitzvah to take peya from vegetables, and therefore it's chayiv in meiser." So the Gemara says, why do you have to explain himself? If he's giving them twice as much, so what's the problem? So he said he didn't have it right there with him. He said, "I'm going to give it to you," and they possibly would not have believed him and thought he was just trying to get rid of them. Okay, now we had discussed earlier using a kachim, so the Gemara quotes a brisa on that subject. The Gemara says, when the kohanim that were serving in the Beis Hamikdash had the skins of the karbanos, they're supposed to belong to the kohanim, the skins which are made into leather, they're very valuable, and they would divide them up every day at the end of the service. Now, the kohanim were divided up in 24 groups, each group served a week at a time, and then each day of the week had one particular family of that group that served. So you had a very small amount of people there dividing up the skins, and what happened was that the stronger kohanim would take more by force than the other kohanim. So in order to prevent that from happening, they decided to leave all the skins until Erev Shabbos, and then on Erev Shabbos they would divide it amongst the entire weekly mishmar. But still what happened was that those who were more powerful because of their rank or a position were taking more than their rightful share. So what they decided to do was that everybody got together and they said, we're going to be makdish automatically all the skins of the karbanos to hektish. Now hektish now had a windfall because these skins are valuable and they now belong to hektish. So the gizbar, the one in charge, sold them, and after a short time they had earned so much money that he was able to pave the floor of Har Bayis with golden tiles in amma by an amma with the thickness of a dinar. And when the people came for Aliyah L'Regel, they came for the Yom Tov, they stacked up all the tiles to show them how well taken care of the Beis Hamikdash is and how their funds aren't going for nothing. Okay. Now, the Gemara has a similar discussion. The Gemara says that there were sycamore trees in Yericho, and the strong people were taking them by force. They were grabbing them, and therefore the people that owned them saw that they're not able to prevent it, so they were makdish it to the Beis Hamikdash, and that was supposed to prevent people from stealing it. So about that, the Gemara says that Abba Shaul ben Butnis said the name of Rav Yosef Bar Chanin. He said the following things. He said, "Woe is to me from the houses of several kohanim and from the problems that they cause." Which houses? So woe is to me from the kohanim of Baisus, because they have sticks. Woe is to me from Chanin, because they have bad advice. Woe is to me from Katros, because of their pens, they write destructive things. And woe is to me from the family of Yishmael ben Piachi. Woe is to me because of their fists. All these are kohanim gedolim. They are the chief kohanim. Their children are the gizborim. They are in charge of the finances of the Beis HaMikdash, their sons-in-law are in charge of giving people orders in the Beis HaMikdash, and their servants go around whacking people with sticks. So these people are powerful, and they are abusing their power. Says the Gemara, there's a brisa that says there are 4 things which cause the Azara, the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, to cry out. What were they? First of all, about the 2 sons of Eli HaKohen. Eli HaKohen were not treating the women who came to bring karbanos properly. The language of the Pesachim is that they were metame them, they defiled them. The Gemara explains elsewhere they didn't actually do anything with them, they just made them stand and wait and not go home to their husbands, because they first had to bring their karbanos before they could go home, and the sons of Eli did not give them proper priority. So the Azara screamed because of that. Second scream was because of Yisachar, the man of Barkai. He insulted karbanos and honored himself by wearing silk gloves whenever he came to perform the avoda. It's not the correct thing to do. You have to be touching the kalim and the materials with your hands. So he honored himself at the expense of the proper avoda. And then the Azara had 2 screams which were in favor of somebody. The Azara said, let the gates lift up their heads and welcome Yishmael ben Piachi. As we saw before, his family were low quality people, but he himself was a tzaddik, and he is a student of Pinchas, and let him serve as the Kohen HaGadol, because he was a very chashuv person. And the 4th scream was that the gates should lift up their heads and welcome Yochanan ben Arbai, who is a student of Pinkai, and he should fill up his stomach with karbanos. So they said about Yochanan ben Arbai that he fed a lot of people. He raised a number of Kohanim in his house, and in one meal he polished off with all the people that he fed. He had 300 calves that he used up, and 300 barrels of wine, and 40 sa, a very large measure, of birds, and that was for dessert. Just, they said in all the days of Yochanan ben Arbai was around, there was no leftovers of karbanos in the Beis HaMikdash. You're not supposed to leave over, and whatever was left over has to be burned, but in his days nothing was left over. So now the Gemara goes back to Yisachar Ish Kfar Barkai, the one who wore the silk gloves. The Gemara says what happened to him, what was his punishment. The Gemara says it was a king and queen. In Krisis we see that it's Yanei HaMelech and his wife, and they were sitting and eating a kingly Suda, and they got into an argument as to whether a lamb tastes better than a goat kid, the baby sheep or the baby goat, which is higher quality. So the king said it's the goat, the queen said it's the lamb. They said let's call the Kohen HaGadol. He certainly knows about different qualities of meat because he's a Kohen HaGadol, eats a lot of meat from karbanos. They asked him, and he waved his hand disparagingly, and he said, if the goat would be so good, then that would be what we would use for the carbon and tamid, but we don't. We use the lamb. Now, the king was insulted. He was insulted that he didn't agree with him, and he was insulted that he spoke disparagingly, so he said his punishment should be that his right hand should be cut off. So what Yisachar did was he bribed the executioner to cut off his left hand instead, and when the king found out about that, he said, no, you cut off his right hand, and then he ended up with no hands. So the Gemara says that Rav Yosef said, blessed is the Kadosh Baruch Hu who took his punishment in this world so that he shouldn't have punishment for his misdeeds in the next world. Like this, his hands were removed as punishment for his delicate treatment of his own hands. Now, the Gemara says that actually he made a serious mistake. His proof from the fact that the carbon tamid was a lamb doesn't prove anything. The Gemara has a Mishnah that says usually kvasim, sheep, are mentioned before the goats. You may think that they're higher quality, but it's not true because the pasuk explicitly says "Im keves yavi karbonai." If he brings a sheep, when it's referring to a carbon chatas, that shows that if he brings a sheep, but there is nothing that's preferable about bringing a sheep over the goat. Ravina says you can learn from a different pasuk. It says "Im keves im eis," if a goat, if a sheep, or if a goat. There is no preference for one over the other. They're both if this or if that, and it's not correct to say that one is for.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.